So I think today we will just post to it a little bit later. Afterwards, it's going to give me a hard time. So with that said, we'll get started. So I just want to start by thanking everybody for being here today. Before we dive in, just again, a reminder, everything we talk about here is for educational purposes only. It is not meant to be personal health advice, but rather it's to stimulate those quality conversations so you can go back to your own care provider and have this discussion with them. They know you the best in the individual details about your health. So again, please don't act on anything directly here without the consultation of your own primary care physician. So with that said, today we want to talk a little bit about fatigue. And I guess if we were to sum up today, the core thing here is that fatigue of its own is not a diagnosis. It is a symptom that points to basically things going on. I guess I always like my analogies and metaphors, and I want you to think of fatigue as your check the engine light indicator. When the engine light comes on, it does not mean the car is broken, but it does mean that something is happening and you need to get things looked into and checked out. So fatigue is the same way. The tiredness itself isn't exactly the heart of the problem, but it is a body's natural signal to kind of find out what's going on. Something's changing. So again, how do you know when you have real fatigue? Well, it's kind of a vague answer again that you kind of feel your way to, but it's a very particular kind of tired. It's the kind of tired that just coffee doesn't touch, and that you feel like you slept a good 8 hours, but the sleep doesn't dent it. And it's one of those things that becomes quite pervasive, that no matter what you do, you just don't feel right. It's not normal for you. And today we're going to walk through why that happens. So again, what we want to do is really make it very clear that fatigue of its own is a symptom. It's not actually a diagnosis. And sometimes when you go to your care provider's office, you can find that you talk about fatigue and they run some tests and you're told, well, everything is normal. It can be highly frustrating to the point where you may even feel kind of dismissed or embarrassed about bringing it up. And I would encourage you not to, I want to support you. I really don't want you to feel that way. It's hard not to feel what you feel. Of course, we all feel what we feel. But I want to give you a little bit of context so that you can understand what the issue is, so that we can find better, more effective ways for you to approach this problem. So normal values. This is, again, one of these conversations I have frequently and that we talk about a lot here on the podcast, is that normal values are from reference ranges. What does that mean? When you have blood work done, normal values are based on a healthy population. And they're statistical values. So basically, a normal range, generally speaking, encompasses where about 95% of the population would fall into. So that is for a population statistic in general. It doesn't necessarily mean you. So there is a fundamental difference between a normal value and an optimal value. Optimal values tend to be where people feel the best. So again, where do we see this? Well, let me give you just an example that you might be able to relate to, somebody who you might know in your sphere who kind of sounds like this. So this is a composite patient. It's not a real patient because, again, we don't want to talk about private things in a public situation. So again, this is an imagined patient sort of put together from all the patients I see here in the office. So let's pick a woman in her mid-40s. She could be told that, again, she's normal. She's had routine blood work. Routine blood work might include something like a blood count. So she's not anemic. She knows that. And maybe a thyroid screening test, something called a TSH. It's often the first thyroid test that is reached for. It gives a little bit of an idea, but it doesn't give the whole picture. So she may have done both of those things and told, well, they're normal. So again, well, you know what? Maybe just feeling fatigued is normal because your blood work's normal. And that may be the end of the discussion. And so what I'd like you to do is become more aware of how to advocate for yourself. And we need to look more at what's optimal versus what is normal. And in my office, the way I describe it and the way I look at this approach to medicine is we have limited resources, both in doctors and nurse practitioners. There's not a lot. and we have limited resources in the funding that's available for blood work. So if we were, again, to liken this to an analogy, it's like trying to dress the entire population with a muumuu. So if you, I know it's a little bit extreme, but if you imagine a muumuu, great big cloaky flowy outfit, it may fit almost everyone, but it doesn't fit everybody beautifully. And this is where, if I were to make a comparison, I would say let's look at a muumuu style in medicine versus a tailored suit. A tailored suit is specific to the individual. It fits them perfectly. It hugs all the curves in all the right ways. And again, it's very, very different. It's much harder to provide a tailored suit approach in medicine than it is just to give everybody, issue everybody a muumuu. So we need to look specifically at people's levels, and we need to look at some of the other factors. So again, with fatigue, sometimes the first things that get looked at are thyroid and or blood count, but in some cases, that could be the underlying culprit. Certainly having anemia or a low blood count can make you very, very tired, along with a host of other symptoms. And or an underactive thyroid can also cause quite a bit of fatigue and a lot of other symptoms, but there are other things to consider as well. So sometimes what we need to do is look at a more comprehensive picture of the person. Sometimes, in addition, we look at expanded blood work, so we can also look at hormonal levels. So certainly hormones also can impact on energy level, like estrogen, progesterone, testosterone. And yes, ladies, testosterone is a human being's hormone, not just a male hormone. Women do have testosterone as well. Testosterone is a bit of a metabolic driver in women for muscle mass, brain energy, bone strength, and others. DHEA is another type of hormone. A complete and comprehensive thyroid panel, which is that above just the screening test, we need to look at actually how the actual thyroid hormones are presenting. And if there's funny little weird things out there. So the active form of thyroid hormone is actually a hormone called T3. And T3 is made, it's kind of like reverse numerical order. So it's a little bit confusing because it goes from T4 down to T3. So T4 is the storage form of the hormone, and T3 is the active form of the hormone. But sometimes in certain situations, for example, high stress environments are one of the reasons this can happen. Sometimes T4 is getting broken down more into something called reverse T3. So why is that an issue? Well, what is reverse T3? I may have never heard of that before, and many people haven't. So interestingly, T3 is the active hormone the way we normally use it. T3 interacts with a receptor the same way that a key interacts with a lock. The key that is cut correctly will slide into the lock, will turn the tumblers, the lock will unlock, and the lock mechanism works. If you have another key that looks similar to the correct key, you might be able to slide it in the lock, but it's not going to turn. And so when that happens, not only is it not activating the lock, it's not unlocking the door, but it's also occupying the space where a good key could have gone, thereby blocking that lock and making that door unopenable. So in the same way, T4 can sometimes, the storage form of the hormone, as it's becoming activated, can make reverse T3. I want you to think of reverse T3 like that key looks really similar to the good T3, but it's slightly different. So it goes into the thyroid hormone's receptor, but it blocks it. So it doesn't allow the good one to activate. And so these people can sometimes be quite fatigued and have a lot of symptoms of low thyroid, but if we don't go looking for that in particular, we may miss it. The other way to think of it is like a pair of proper fitted, expensive leather gloves. Not the disposable rubber ones you wear where one can go in both hands. But again, think of reverse T3 as a mirror image of the actual usable T3. Again, a key that doesn't fit. So again, if you think about right and left gloves, if you have leather gloves, the right hand glove will not fit properly on the left hand and vice versa. So T3, reverse T3, is actually a mirror image of the actual usable T3. And it's not part of a standard screening panel. So if somebody is having a lot of symptoms of fatigue that are unexplained and have not been discovered, going a little further and looking for that can be important. Likewise, there can be antibody issues that can be at play here. So again, if we don't go looking for it, it's not part of regular screening. The thyroid, unfortunately, can fall victim to mistaken identity. So this is a good way to think of thyroid hormone issues when we have issues around antibodies. The body has its own immune system, its own special defense layer to try to keep invaders at bay. And by invaders, I mean bacteria, viruses, toxic particles, and the like. So we have a very complex immune system that does that job very well. But sometimes some foreign invaders, some bacteria, sometimes certain substances, like I'll give you a classic example, some people with gluten sensitivity, there is a relationship, a real relationship in some folks, not everyone, that when they have a gluten sensitivity issue, the gluten molecule can somewhat look similar to the immune system as parts of the thyroid. And sometimes we see these cross antibodies in thyroid issues and also in gluten sensitivity. And so that would be a classic medical example of mistaken identity, where the immune system is reacting to the gluten, but the antibodies react similarly with the thyroid and can actually attack it and cause problems with it. So again, there's a number of different ways we can end up in a situation where people may be actually really having thyroid issues, and the simple screening test, the TSH, is simply going to miss it. So it's one of these things that even though resources are scarce, if you're really struggling, it's worth going back to your primary care provider and just saying, look, I'm really having these symptoms. Be very specific. It's important to be specific. I'm feeling this kind of fatigue, and here's the outcome. In the afternoon, I can't do this or that because of it. Or I'm having fatigue and I'm gaining all this weight. And by that, I mean I've gained X number of pounds in this time frame, but I have not changed my diet and I'm still as active as I was. The only thing that's happened is this weight gain and this fatigue. So again, being very specific in your appointments, talking to these things and knowing that there's more available. You could, again, carry on and say, I know we've done some screening, but could we look a little further? Do you think it's possible that I might be maybe making antibodies to my thyroid, or maybe do I have this weird reverse T3 thing? I have had a lot of stress, and sometimes in high stress states, you can make this funny mirror image. Is there value in checking for that? So again, these are things to talk about. You really want to be, aware of that. And again, this can also play a role in hormone function when you're metabolically not functioning as well, because again, the thyroid is one of the major metabolic drivers for your system. It can impact on your other downstream hormones, such as your what people more commonly associate with menopause and perimenopause, or sex hormones, the estrogen, progesterone, testosterone, DHEA. We're all very sophisticated, walking, talking bags of biochemistry. So again, these chemical reactions do impact on each other. So this conversation is something that I try to go into a little bit more detail. The thyroid conversation can feel a little bit complicated. I have a chapter dedicated specifically to thyroid, some of these little parameters we talked about today, and also some action tools in the associated workbook for my book, Hot Flash to Hot Damn. And again, it's very much focused on trying to make the most of health as we go forward, but also to help the reader, or if you're listening to it, really advocate for themselves and know what questions to ask and become a better, stronger partner in their healthcare. So again, that's Hot Flash to Hot Damn. And the full conversation is there. You can find that in the book, Hot Flash to Hot Damn. And that is available. I'm going to try to pull up here a little code for you if I can. Here we go. This is for the ebook in particular. So Hot Flash to Hot Damn is the book. And if you screen the little QR code there, that will bring you in. It's available on Amazon. We have it as an ebook, a hard copy, and a paperback. And then with that, again, we also have a complimentary workbook. So this workbook is no charge. It has some great exercises. So if you just even want to take a look at the exercises and you're not sure about getting the book, this is a wonderful place to start. Or if you have a friend, or this little clinical vignette, this story that we're talking about the fatigue, if you know somebody that this resonates with, this may be a great starting point for them. So again, if you scan the little QR code there below, that's going to bring you directly into the workbook, and you can download it. It's a free download. So again, that's something that everybody would be welcome to. And again, if you want to know a little bit more about what all we do, this is the link for our website. We would be delighted to have you peruse and take a look. And if you're enjoying the content, we'd like to have you subscribe. So if you like what you hear today, or if there's certain topics you want to cover, please feel free to reach out to me, and you'll see this here. We're going to try to be here every single week. So again, this is something that we'll be doing on an ongoing basis, and I would love to make sure that I'm tackling the topics that matter. So again, please feel free to connect with us and subscribe and let us know what you would like to see and hear. So that's basically everything for this week. Next week, we're going to talk about the saggy trampoline. What do I mean by that? We're going to talk about pelvic floor. So pelvic floor anatomy 101. And we're going to look at how the pelvic floor, like a little trampoline or a hammock, loses its tension over time, and why Kegels alone sometimes have just simply been not enough. And we're going to talk about some interesting things. We're going to talk about some technology too, something called the V-Pulse chair. So that's just a little preview and a little tease. So we hope to see you there next week. So thank you for watching. And again, this is really meant for education only. Please don't act on anything you've seen or heard here without consulting with your own personal care provider. And questions are always welcome. And until next week, have a great